Yes, so digestion. Well, digestion is important, obviously, because that's how we, when we digest things properly, we absorb and get more nutrients from the food we're eating.
Yep. And they say death begins in the colon. And so, if your colon doesn't work, you don't get nutrition, you don't get food, you don't, it's everything.
Right. Well, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, when people don't sleep or other things happen or their skin's breaking out, they don't realize that their digestive system has like everything to do with that.
Either depleted or toxic.
Yeah.
Or both simultaneously. Yeah, it's interesting because I know they talk about the, people that, get gastric bypass and do different surgeries for weight loss, and how much sometimes they cut out areas that are crucial for absorbing nutrients. So it's interesting, and then they give them all these different supplements and all, which is fascinating to me because I think, well, if they can't absorb it, what I don't know, they almost need to have it given intravenously or something like that versus would be a supplement. But anyways.
And I do that because like sometimes if somebody's come to me and they've had, some sort of gastric surgery, maybe there be vitamins, I'll make sure they're sublingual, or I can get them to compound a cream, or, a lot of times they're taking pills and I'm like, if I can make them be given in any other fashion, it helps them actually feel better.
Absolutely. Yeah, so digestion.
Yes. Now, how does the chiropractic care, like, do you ever have like adjust people and then their digestive system starts working because maybe one of their nerves was being pinched and their colon didn't work or something like that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There is a good part of that, right? So if their sympathetics are overwhelmed, so they're kind of living more in fight or flight, a lot of times, they can have an adjustment in the midsection, like the thoracic area, that can calm that down, which is always interesting. So if you're in fight or flight, obviously your brain is sending its energy or its thoughts, if you will, to have you fight or flight, right? Run, flee, just on digestion. So that's one side of it. So that calming motion, just calming people down, if you will, getting them calm. That's a possibility. The other thing too, obviously we do a lot of massages in my clinic, and I think that's very important because so many people are always on go. So they're not ever in that relaxed state to really digest well. That's something that I think is very effective too. And the other thing too, the lumbar spine, sometimes there are some issues if there is some blocks, if you will, like we call them subluxations, but there's a block in the flow of that nerve energy. It can cause them to be constipated. It can cause, so yeah, that is definitely a possibility with chiropractic adjustments. There definitely is a lot with that as well.
Right. And you've studied acupuncture. So like, what do you think is better? Like acupuncture energy changes or chiropractic energy changes, or it's like two different things? If you're on the nerve, you need to get off. And if the nerve is blocked, you need to acupuncture it.
Well, so I don't really practice acupuncture now. I study it.
Right. But you know enough about it where you could answer the question better than me.
Yeah. So with that, so there's different, like it's like a different philosophy, if you will. So It's interesting because, chiropractic's more focused on, I say it's different. It is and it's not. There is an innate energy in all of us. So that's the basis of chiropractic. And it's above, down, inside out, right? It's like your body literally healing itself. And if there's a block in the flow of that nerve signal, if you will, so it's an interesting thing because it starts becoming, there's a lot of science to it, but yet it's very much philosophical as well. So there's a block in the flow of that nerve energy, then absolutely it can block that. Now on the acupuncture side, it's very much philosophical. Of course, they've proven a lot of it too scientifically, and it's a block in the flow of chi. So block in the flow of chi is going to kind of stagnate everything. And it's interesting, when they're using acupuncture needles, they also use a lot of herbs, a lot of Chinese medicine, and a lot of really fun tasting herbs.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes they actually put them in capsules too to kind of get things flowing. But one of the bases for a lot of the Chinese medicine is if you have a block in the digestive system, I mean, it's very toxic. So they've got to get it moving. So a lot of their herbs that they use are very much basically push the crap out, if you will.
Right. Oh, like senna and cascara, or some other herbs that we probably don't commonly hear about.
I don't, yeah, those are possibilities that I think it's more things that you haven't heard of.
Right.
I can't say even they're a lot of them are Chinese herbs. So they're going to be more in pinyin or Chinese terms, right?
Right.
Some of them we use in Western medicine, but that's just the basis of a lot of the Chinese medicine. It's just get things flowing. And so a lot of the herbs cause your stool to like loosen to get it going, right? Which is kind of an interesting way to look at it, you know, but sometimes too much heat, right, can cause problems. Too much cold can cause stagnation, can cause problems. So yeah, it's more based on heat versus cold versus stagnant versus, you know, flowing. That's a lot of the basis for the acupuncture in Chinese medicine, which, you know, I don't know. It's kind of, it was always very fascinating to me. I thought, I always tell people, you know, and even the dry needling, I'm not a fan of that. I think that if you want to really experience acupuncture the way it's meant to be experienced and really get the results, you really need to go to an acupuncturist that's been trained in Chinese medicine, that practices their tuina, their qigong, their energy, you know, every day as part of, because it's not just putting a needle in.
It's
so,
yeah.
Anyways, that's my perspective of that.
So what do you?
I think it's all pretty powerful. I do think though that a lot of people were so depleted of nutrients that they're not digesting their food properly. They're not assimilating. They're not getting what they could from it. We're so lacking in so many enzymes. I know you like the digestive enzymes as well.
Oh, big time. I'm like 100%. Like, and I tell people in my clinic, I'm like, most people by the time they're 40 are missing an enzyme, and it could be connected to some symptom that you're feeling, but it might not be yet. Mm-hmm. And just as we get older, we just know that we don't digest as well. Like when you're a kid, you never think, oh, I ate a burger, I feel so terrible. I mean, you have to do a lot as a kid to feel terrible, but as an adult, you don't have to do a lot to feel terrible. Yeah. You can eat a slice of pizza and it'll attack you all day. And that's frequently an enzyme issue or an acid imbalance, or your gut flora is weird. But at any rate, I'm like, enzymes and probiotics are like my top two things to tell people to do. Like, like
again, I can't decide if it's, so I think it's a combination. Probably it's definitely a lack because we don't eat enough food-based product. I mean, I'm sorry, I say food-based,
plant-based.
That was the word I was going for. Enough plant-based, which is where a lot of those enzymes are. And so because of that, we start produce, I guess we're not making as many, we don't have as many, we're just, I don't know, it's interesting to see. But you're right, yeah, kids seem to have it a little bit easier on digesting.
Because they're young and they presumably have enzymes, you know what I mean? Like they haven't used them all up yet, but as you eat a poor diet for 20, 30, 40 years, you might lack something. Your gallbladder comes out, you don't have lipase. You know, so
that seems like a really common thing
these days. Gallbladder automatic enzyme deficiency, automatic enzyme. People, have trouble with fats. They have trouble with fats to begin with, and then they have trouble with fats after it's taken out too.
Right. So why are they taking it out so frequently? It seems like it's a very common thing nowadays, like more common than I ever remember it before.
Because by the time women are 40, a good percentage of them have, and I don't know about men because I see more women, so men probably too, but for sure women. And we used to, like when we were learning in medical school, like who to start evaluating for gallstones, they were like female, overweight, fertile, 40. They're like, if those four things are happening, start a gallbladder workup, go to an ultrasound or whatever. So let's say they're having pain, then you're like, well, they're having an attack, let's remove it. That's because that'll end the attack and they can go home. But then also sometimes they don't have an attack and you're like, well, we could take it out while you're calm so you don't get an attack and show up in the emergency room. And there really isn't a way we can't go open and take the stones out and leave your gallbladder in because it leaks. There's so many complications doing that they just don't offer that. So it's just one of those things, like if you want to keep it, don't get into that situation where we see stones And and people don't know to do that. You don't think about digestion until it goes awry. You don't think, oh, I'm 30 and I'm perfectly great. Let me start taking enzymes and probiotics now, and then eating a vegetarian diet so I don't get these stones. It doesn't. Yeah.
Like, do they ever offer people like a radical diet instead of just taking it out? Is that ever the option on the medical side? I don't think it is. I don't think I ever hear anybody saying, oh, my doctor told me to change my diet. Nope, they just said, let's just rip it
take it out.
Right?
Because if they don't do that and then come back in the emergency room and nearly die, you're liable. Yeah, and you've seen how offering people diets goes. It might work. I mean, the diet will work, but will the patient do the diet to the degree that it needs to be done to really get rid of they're hard to get rid of, even if you did the diet. So it's one of those, it's a liability thing where it's like, it sounds like a good idea. And I would do that because by the time a person's come to me, they've already been offered the surgery, they've rejected the surgery, and now they're a more motivated person where I can say, all right, you're very motivated to not have this surgery. All right, here's the diet. But when they go into the other random place where their insurance is going to take the gallbladder out for free, they don't want to go and pay for my diet, because that's a mean diet. It's beyond.
That's why I think it seems like that's always the answer, which
it is.
Makes sense why it's the answer.
Yeah.
And I think too, they're not, and that's the challenge with our system, right? Is that they don't have time to sit down. Well, they're not educated, first of all,
right, to do it
the majority of the time. And on the other side of that, they're not given the time it would take to really sit down with the patient and educate the patient on the changes that they would need to make, right? And I think too, people are so conditioned to go in and get their quick fix, right? That's the other challenge.
And plus, there's not a diet that's studied. Like you and I have experience, and we have an idea of what we would want to do to the patient. Like, oh, here's a raw vegan diet, but most people aren't going to do that. Even I don't do that, And
well, if I had something, I say this, somebody was telling me the other day, it was a question that kind of was brought to me. What would I do if I was diagnosed with cancer? Like, what route would I take? And I'm like, oh, I sure as heck wouldn't do the chemo radiation route.
Right.
It's like, there are so many of those options so it is, I guess it's depending on the person too.
Right.
And, what they have access to and what I would be committed to. Obviously, if it was something that serious, I would be really committed all of a sudden to, doing everything that I know I should be doing 24/7 all the time. Right. Yeah, it's interesting to look at though, like at what point.
Yeah. Cause like I said, after somebody's had an acute attack, do you have the time that it's going to, the gallstones aren't going to go away with the 2-week diet. So do you have time before they show back up to the it's a time factor too. Like I said, if I were doing an ultrasound on somebody and I was like, oh, look, I see some tiny gallstones that you don't even know about. And that person immediately acted upon that news with some sort of a low fat diet or vegetarian diet before the surgeon spoke to them, then maybe that would work. But if the surgeon's the first person who sees them and they're in the emergency room, you end up in the emergency room, you're getting a surgery.
Right.
Even you can't bypass it. If I happen to be walking through the emergency room and you said, hey, Dr. Comeaux, what about this diet? I'm like, you're in the ER. Yeah. That is not an appropriate conversation for the emergency room. In my office and you're hanging out, that's a great conversation. You show up in the ER with, an appendix or this or that, you're next in line for the surgery, because you don't do an acute attack of appendix and now here's my diet. We know what's going to make our appendix act up, but we don't act on that news every day like, hey, let's eat healthy so my appendix doesn't want to leave me. No, once it's inflamed and you have a fever, who's next in the OR? So sometimes it's just like any conversation that you have that's different than that is, if that patient goes bad later, you got nothing. You don't have a paper that says I should have given them a diet.
No, very true, very true. No, it's just interesting to kind of think like what point. And
would you do?
I also see that the majority of patients, I really am really clear. Unfortunately, it's unfortunate that that's the case. That the majority of people, they just want that quick fix. It's like, just give me the pill, cut it out, give me the surgery, whatever, so I can go back to my old ways of eating.
Right. That's true.
Eat, right?
Or it's a cost thing, because the surgery, presumably you have a deductible maybe, but your insurance pays for it. But if I say follow this really healthy diet, everyone can't afford, even if it makes sense and they could do it, they can't all afford to do diet, the organic vegetable, let me make all my own food, whatever diet it is we've agreed on that seems to be working. And plus, sometimes I might have to troubleshoot a few different things before we figure out what'll work. Because there's no prescribed diet that dissolves gallstones. There's just people who've said they did a gallbladder cleanse. And if, I'm not saying it never worked, but I'm saying plenty of times it probably didn't. Or somebody did a vegan diet and maybe it got rid of the gallstones, but that doesn't mean it always does it either. We have no idea what percentage of the time any of those diets work. I just know a number of things could help, but I don't know. Is it going to be 6 months, 3 months, a year? Do I have that long before they have another attack? And then if it gets stuck in their gallbladder and their bile duct, then they get pancreatitis, and now they're in the hospital for a disease I can't do surgery on. Be a huge no. So that's why they're not going to be offered that. It's just something that, like I said, I'm a bigger proponent of prevention than I am of, oh, let's get in trouble and now let's do all of our things. I'm like, that's what, and even my friends, that's a lot of them want to do that. Like, oh, they want to do what they want to do. And then when they're in super big trouble with the bag of prescription pills, then they like, Tamyra, remember 10 years ago, you told me I should do something. I'm like, yes, I do remember. And they're like, now I'm ready. And I'm like, okay, that's a very different project now than it was before. Why didn't anybody tell me? I'm like, yeah, people did. I was people. I told you.
Well, I guess people hear when they're ready to hear.
Right.
That is something that I have learned so well. And it's interesting working with people that are, and it's usually when they're in crisis mode, something horrible's happening, something is, and that's what gets people to be finally open to, what were you talking about before? Like, right. What was it you used to say? Or,
exactly. And like, they believe you and they can afford to do it and it's a doable thing. But like I said, pain is a huge motivator. So it's not until pain happens or they get scared because they got to take a drug and now they want to do it. But I was like, but it made all the sense in the world 2 years ago when I said, oh, you know what, do this. And they were like, that makes sense. I'll catch you later but I feel great, and I'm like, okay, what's going to happen.
The other challenge too, especially with friends, they hear us differently. It's like friends and family hear us differently than patients do.
But see, patients have come and paid and they're usually in pain or some crisis or some sort of, they've been motivated already. I rarely get a person who's like, I'm great, everything's great, I feel perfect, I'm on no drugs, here I am to pay you cash. No, by the time they get to me, they've been to a lot of specialists, paid them more than they're ever going to pay me. And then they have a different perspective on it. Like, oh, let me do this prevention thing. It might save me money. And I've been sick and I don't like even free sick. Paying to be well is better than free sick. But they don't think that until they get sick, because paying to be well sounds stupid when you're well. To them, they're like, wait, why am I going to spend all that money on organic? I feel fine. And then they get really sick and they're like, oh, I think I should spend money on organic because that didn't work out what I was doing before. You have to sometimes fail the first plan to go on to the next plan. But digestion is, like I said, is a thing that people take for granted. Like, how many patients do you have on antacids? And they just know that I'm like, my head explodes whenever somebody's like, oh yeah, every single day I have to take Prilosec, Zantac, this and that. I'm like, okay, that's the first drug I'm taking. They're like, I want to come off my blood pressure medicine. I'm like, no, the first thing I'm taking you off of is that acid blocker.
Gosh, that is the thing that makes me cringe the most. Like, I said, go read how long it says you should be taking something like that.
2 weeks.
Yes. And some of these people have been on it for 10 years.
Yes.
And I look at all the, if they hadn't been on that for 10 years, all the things that would be potentially not have happened, right? Yep. So yeah, that's one of the first things too, because they're so afraid of the pain of the acid reflux or whatever it is that they're having. They're so afraid to have that they are just unbelievable that they absolutely have to have it, right? So yeah, and I'm like I said, I'm fine with them trying to escape pain, but I'm like, we're gonna have to really actively try other ways to get rid of that pain. I mean, like, you're gonna be on, and I agree, like,
if they're on an over-the-counter acid medicine, it's one pill, it's 10, $20, and they're managing the acid. I mean, it's a done. But and any plan I come up with is going to involve, you're going to be on enzymes, you're going to be on probiotics. I'm probably going to give you like peppermint essential oil in some sort of form to help you with the acid. And I have a few other things that I might try. So that's like, now you're taking 4 pills and not 1 pill. But the 4 pills are still better for your digestion overall than the 1 pill that's actually wrecking your digestion. I'm like, so it's hard to wrap people around the fact that they've got to now do 4 pills instead of 1 pill to rehab their gut. But it is what it is. That's what we're gonna do.
It's gotta be like a reset
Yep.
completely, because the other thing too is that balance, the pH of the stomach has got to be right around 2.2 to actually break down food and metabolize it properly. And so if they're taking something that's constantly increasing that pH, the body is continuing to pump more acid to keep that. It's got to stay at that baseline. It's got to stay at that number. So it's,
right.
I don't know. It's interesting.
I know, it's like you're blocking the acid. I'm like, and the acid, why is the acid coming out? You don't have enzymes, and your body's like, well, enzymes is what we're supposed to do, but they're gone. But we have this acid. Let's put a whole bunch out. Well, then you block it. So you've blocked plan B, and you don't have a plan C. And I'm like, yeah, we're going to have to like recreate what your body was trying to do. And it's hard because your body was naturally doing it, and that's easy. But when you have to recreate nature, it's actually not that easy, but we must do it.
Patient that I worked with, and she had something, I can't remember what it was, but it was a really odd issue with her valve. And so no matter what I did, it was just, and I think she almost needed to probably have some kind of procedure done.
Yeah, she probably had like pyloric stenosis or something like that, or
I can't remember. It's been quite a few years ago, but she was the only one that I have not been able to get off of the daily antacid. She ate really clean. She was a very healthy person. It wasn't like she was doing anything wrong. It's just it was a truly a malfunction of a valve. And I think it was actually, no, it's the turnaround. I mean, it's not, I say easy. It's not a hard thing to do. It can be challenging for people because it takes something from them. But it's not difficult. It's got to be done. So just a process.
Now, have you ever tried to use any essential oils for digestion? Like, have you ever used peppermint oil and successfully gotten someone's digestive issues to resolve? Or,
I can't say I've used a lot of oils necessarily. I know I recommend people to use drink peppermint tea, different teas sometimes, but I haven't told them here use the oil specifically.
mm-hmm.
I do know that it's in some of the products, and the digestive products, they do have some oils in them, but it's not strictly oils. And there is, I haven't used it a lot, but that one product that Young Living does,
the Digize,
and the Sleep. Yeah, I haven't really used those too much, to be honest. I actually have some different blends of digestive enzymes that I use. So
yeah, because like everybody swears by Digize, it has peppermint in it, but I know this, like for irritable bowel syndrome, they have studied peppermint essential oil. Mm-hmm. So I that's one of my favorite things to tell people to do, is like specifically peppermint if they have any sort of irritable bowel type symptoms. I mean, peppermint is, they make over-the-counter products for it, like IB Guard or something for irritable bowel. They actually make products for it. So I usually tell people, and peppermint, like if you have it in essential oil form, you can put it in water and make a tea out of it. You can put it under your tongue. It's so versatile, You can rub it on your tummy if you don't feel like eating it. So, I mean, I like it because it's versatile, because, by the time people get to me, they're on a fair number of pills, and me trying to give them more pills doesn't always work, but an oil that they can put in other places might work.
Versatile. It's probably one of my favorite oils.
Yeah, it's it's good for focus and keeping you, like, pops you awake because it's so stimulating, and it's good for soothing things. So I've used that a lot for the gastric issues, and also
sinuses, like big time.
Oh yeah, sinus. Yep.
Yeah.
And then there are some essential oils. So you've heard of bitters, right?
Oh yeah.
Like like in drinks. Most of the time you've heard of bitters because it goes in a drink. But bitters, like certain essential oils are bitter, or certain herbs are, like cardamom is a bitter, like there's certain herbs that are bitter. And so you can use certain herbs to stimulate your digestive juices, because if you just drank bitters or some sort of alcoholic drink with bitters in it, it would make your digestive system pay attention.
Right. Well, that's a lot of times. I know in some cultures they have the after dinner.
Oh yes.
Drink, right? And it's typically that type of drink to kind of get things moving.
Yep.
So.
Which is good. A lot of other countries do have habits that we do not have.
Right. Right. What do they call it after dinner? It's called
aperitif and aperitif.
There you go. Yep.
Yep. So I found this article on how to make your own digestive bitters. I bet you anything peppermint's in it, but let me see. Oh, fennel. I want to say fennel. It would be one of the things that's really good for digestion. So if you even had fennel, I grow fennel in my yard, and I can put it in some water and make a tea out of it, or I can eat it, or you can chop up fennel and make a fennel salad. So there's a lot of ways to get these things in your diet without just. So.
Okay, I have a question. Is there some sound? Are you outside or something?
No, why you hear something funny? I'm in the same place I always am.
It sounds like air or something.
Like a wind tunnel?
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you're close to the computer, so you hear I have you close, so you're louder, but you're probably hearing my computer, the motor running. Okay. So okay, might be that. But yeah, I had you close, so you're sitting on the computer. So it said taking digestive bitters before a large meal can help to aid digestion and stimulate bile juices and calm the nerves. And when you taste bitterness, your intestinal activity increases. It starts the things. Yeah, there's just something about bitter. So when you eat bitters before a meal, then let's see, what is bitter? Bitter greens, yes. So I guess salad is always a good thing. Especially some of those little spring herb mixes are kind of bitter. Sage is a bitter. Cardamom. See, I remember the cardamom was a weird bitter thing. Sage and cardamom. Yeah, eat better foods in the form of appetizers, stimulates the digestion process. Spoonful of raw apple cider vinegar. Yes, but apple cider vinegar is really obnoxious, and it'll be like acid. It breaks things down. A lot of people have told me that apple cider vinegar was like really helpful for them digestion. With digestion. I mix it with I mix like a tablespoon in a cup of water. I've gotten pretty used to it. It's obviously very acidic, but it's not too bad. I use a straw. Yeah, if you mix it with water, it's probably okay. I used to try to drink it straight like a shot, and it was, it's like trying to drink pure lemon juice as a shot. Like, it's tart. That's a little challenging for me. I haven't been able to do it straight like that, but if I mix it with water, and like I said, 1 tablespoon in a cup of water, I can. Oh yeah, it's not bad. They make drinks like that. Those little, they sell drinks already made. Yeah, peppermint chlorophyll that I mix with it too. So that's pretty good. Oh yeah, see, that would work. People look at me like I'm crazy. Things that they eat, drink, eat. But we both have habits that are going to keep us away from many other things. I mean, that's the plan. Like, how many things a day do you do to help your digestive system? Because I definitely take enzymes every day. I usually do probiotics, because sometimes I'll do and have a lot of different ways to prebiotic, probiotic. I'm always doing some sort of thing with that. I do probiotics. I usually change up. I do different types, different forms of probiotics. I usually do that in the evening. My apple cider vinegar routine, I usually do that. That's usually a morning daily routine. Did you ever try the gummies, or do you always take the liquid, or do you think the gummies are worthwhile? No, I've never tried the gummies. I've had patients who liked them. In capsules though, but I don't. Okay. So you think the capsules are good, but you've never tried the gummies? Yeah, I've never tried the gummies. Yeah, I'm not a big gummy person. I can say from the time I was a kid, gummy anything, I'm like, ugh, I don't like it in my mouth. It's like I can't stand like gummy bears, gummy worms, gummy like that texture in my mouth. I've never liked it. So that could be part of it. So that
I have a little bit of a bias there against twins.
Yeah, we all have our thing. You know, like I said, if things smell funny, I usually warn patients. I'm like, oh, that's going to smell bad. I don't know about that. Or that's going to taste bad. And they're like, oh, I'll do it anyway. And I'm like, yeah, we never do things that taste nasty for like 10 years. You know what I mean? You got to find something you like. Yeah.
You kind of grow accustomed to the flavor, right?
Yeah.
So not very many people can do the apple cider vinegar.
Yeah, well, you've learned to mix it like straight. I didn't do this for, I haven't done that for a year straight, but I mean, if I mixed it and made a yummy drink out of it, or could put it in my tea and not even notice it was there, I'm more likely to do something if I'm like, oh, can't even taste it. Right. But if I can taste it, I'm like, oh, okay, what am I going to do now?
Yeah, it's pretty strong.
Pretty strong. But it's a good idea. I mean, I think it's one of the things that I like for digestion. I like enzymes. I like probiotics. Those are like my top 3. A lot of people with poor digestion have constipation, and that's a whole new concept. That's a whole new thing to troubleshoot. You know what I mean? It's one thing if you're gassy and burping, but it's another thing if nothing moves. And I'm like, okay, more stuff.
Yeah, I think that the other thing too for digestion in general is, just the basis of metabolism and, the Krebs cycle, right? Taking food, turning it into energy. There's so many nutrients that are involved in that process. And so if people are lacking nutrients, that can also affect their metabolism, digestion, as well. So, it all goes together. So if you're not breaking the foods down and taking the nutrients out of it, that can cause you to be depleted. Then you're depleted, then you further can't digest and metabolize food very well. So it's kind of interesting, all of that. It all goes together. So I know some people, if they're not taking any supplements at all, because there's some people that don't take any vitamins at all. Actually, quite a few, which I kind of get surprised about because I take so many. I assume everybody takes vitamins.
No. When people tell me 0, I'm just like, no. Like, not even a multi, they're like, no. I'm like, not even like a children's chewable tablet? No. I'm like, oh, blasphemy. What?
Yes. I know. But sometimes just giving them a good quality multivitamin can help with our digestion. It can kind of help make things work better because they're kind of filling in some of those gaps of so many missing nutrients. So
yes,
it's like that'll always challenge patients without thinking I need to load them up on so many different supplements. It's like, do I start with a good quality vitamin? Yeah, I guess it just depends on the person too, right?
Yeah, and also, magnesium is actually one of my favorite things because it's an antacid and it's a laxative. Absolutely. So that's like my number one. If I can get somebody on one pill, and the good thing about magnesium is you can do an Epsom salt bath. It doesn't have to be a pill. Mm-hmm. You can do magnesium powder and put it in water and then drink it.
Yeah, I've tried some of those magnesium powders. They're not very tasty though.
Like,
I've got a couple that I'm like, oh, they're just, it's hard for me to drink those. I'd rather take those capsules for the magnesium in that one.
I'll tell you one thing. So Young Living has something called Kid Sense Unwind. It's for kids, okay, but it has 5-HTP, L-theanine, and magnesium. And it's like, it tastes like watermelon. So it tastes like a pixie stick. So it's not nasty and it's magnesium. It doesn't say exactly how much it is, but I'm going to guess for ballpark, it'd be like 200 or something. So it's a way to get at magnesium in because most people are low. And so it's a good way to normalize it. Unwind. It's in the Kid Sense line, but it's called Unwind. And it comes in little stick packs. It's already like you can carry it in your pocket and just pop one whenever you want. But it's calming. It's really for calming. So magnesium emotionally is calming, but it also is an antacid. And it's also has the laxative effects, and it also help blood pressure effects. It also has blood sugar effects. I mean, the magnesium is like everything. So I want everybody that walks on the planet to have more magnesium. And like I said, I'll have them bathe in it because it can be absorbed topically. I'll have them use the Unwind, even if they're not a kid. I'll have them take a pill if they can tolerate it. Like I have tons of pills around my house because I need such a high dose that I'd eat, the whole box of those. Like some of us need a lot. Like somebody who's stressed might be able to absorb more than someone who's not, because it's a stress vitamin. Your body depletes magnesium if you're under a lot of stress. So some people, even though they're taking the amount they're supposed to on the book, if they're an athlete or under a lot of stress or have a stressful job or have a health challenge or just had a virus or whatever, their body might be depleted and need more. Or if you have osteoporosis and your bones need more, then you might be a person who just has a different demand for it. So a lot of people need magnesium more than they think, and I haven't met anyone who doesn't need to supplement with it.
Right. No, I agree. Magnesium is one of my favorite minerals, favorite things to take. I don't miss my magnesium ever. That is one that I don't like to miss. So if I run out, it's not a good thing.
I do. And I, like I said, if I forget it, it reminds me, because like I said, it helps you sleep, it helps you go. So it will remind you. People don't go too many days without it when they really need it, because it's.
I know the lady that does my hair, she takes it. She would get cramps in her feet.
Yes.
Yeah, she tells me, she goes, she goes, I take it within just a couple of days. I'm like feeling great. And she'll run out, and she kind of depends on me to bring it to her when I go in, type of thing. And when she runs out, she's like, oh my gosh, it doesn't take long, because obviously it's water soluble. So if you're not getting it every single day or eating enough of it, it doesn't take long to be depleted. So she notices her feet cramp up very quickly when she's not taking her magnesium regularly. So yeah, it's so important.
Yep.
That's a good one. Let's see. But yeah, just in general, the bees as well, because the bees are so responsible for so many of the, glycolysis, breaking down food, turning it into energy. So that's another thing. Yeah, magnesium's important. Enzymes, probiotics.
Yeah, there's a lot. That's why I'm like, once people get to me, I'm like, I apologize in advance for what we're about to do. Right. But we're about to do a lot of stuff. Now, do you tell people to do yogurt?
If they already have yogurt, I will kind of steer them in a better direction as far as yogurt's concerned, to make sure they're not getting like the one that's lated,
the children's, yeah,
or the junky ones.
Yeah.
Dairy is one of those foods that it kind of is one of those foods that can be kind of an intolerant with some people, not like the lactose intolerance, right? It can create more inflammation. So I don't typically say, go add dairy to your diet. If they're already doing dairy and are eating dairy regularly and it's been okay with them, I just work to give them a healthier version, or make sure they're eating the healthy version, right?
Yeah, because yogurt can be made out of like non-dairy. They could be made out of soy milk. It could be made out of coconut milk. It could be made out of almond milk. So a lot of times I'll suggest that. Yeah, that's true. But I've also
not something I'm like, go add yogurt to your diet if you're not already doing it. So
right.
That's not one of the typical things that I add to.
I usually don't, but when I read about studies in dairy, I mean, of course, it's very inflammatory, and I don't really read a lot of positive studies on what dairy is going to do for you. But something about yogurt, it just doesn't have the bad data as regular dairy. I don't know if it's been processed out where just somehow it's a thing that works for some people. Even people who are lactose intolerant, who like will die with any type of milk, they'll be like, but I like yogurt every day. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, but usually I'll suggest a non-dairy yogurt, and I'll say maybe add it to your smoothie. If you don't really just want to sit there and eat yogurt, if people don't already have the habit, they're not going to start doing yogurt every day. But I'm like, get a almond milk yogurt, because it'll have the probiotics, and then add it to your smoothie. You're already doing that. And then you've got probiotics without, you get some gut friendly things going on.
So yeah, so I guess I don't really recommend that. I'm more of a, I like to fast in the morning. I'm more of a skipping breakfast type person. Yogurt tends to fall in the breakfast category for a lot of people, it seems.
Yeah.
But what?
Or I'll have them do yogurt for dessert, or maybe like, pretend it's ice cream. If you eat ice cream, I might make them switch their ice cream to yogurt and make something, if you're going to eat dairy anyway, at least let it be yogurt. Yeah.
It makes me think I need to figure out some, I've got these shakes, like how to make them more into like an ice cream type base. I wonder if I
freeze them, like put more ice in them, and then make it more like a icy,
like a milkshake,
like a treat, right? You can make a milkshake if you get a good enough shake. Yeah.
Good point.
No, do you find the shakes help with gut? Like, do you ever have people do shakes for their gut health? Like, is there one particular one you like that's like, oh, this will repair your microbiome?
When I do, well, it's interesting. It's like there's so many things that get corrected when people start doing whole food products. When they start eating more whole food and the whole food based shakes, it does completely transform that. Now I've had there was one patient that I think when I look back at that now, because he had a lot of issues with his gut and a lot of issues, I kind of wonder sometimes I do wonder how much people are genuinely following the plan, So anyways, I do think that sometimes. So anyways.
No, but what else? Like, let's say I have somebody replace 2 of their meals, like, hey, do 2 shakes a day and then 1 meal. And maybe they're eating less gluten because they're on if I put them on a vegan shake, maybe it's because their body's just not doing all this digesting that it could heal itself. So I do think sometimes if I can get someone to do a shake, or if they like them, that it does have a role, because sometimes it just pulls bad things out. They don't have to go running around thinking about food and make a bad choice, because I'm like, this shake's okay. Here's what you could put in it. Do this twice a day, and you only have to troubleshoot 1 meal and stay out of trouble.
That is true. I'm trying to think if it's specifically geared toward the gut. I mean, I think they all ultimately are good for repairing the gut. Most of them are doing like phase 1 and 2 liver detox, and they're working at the level of the small and large intestine, right? So they're all working on all of that. Is it specific to that? There's a couple of things I've used, like the prebiotics and some of those products that are very specific to the gut. If they really need gut repair, there's some products that I'll use. Is the one shake alone? It does a lot. Don't get me wrong. It does a lot. Is it enough? It depends on the price. Depends on the video case, right?
Right.
So I don't know. That's a good question. Is there something specific you do that is like universal across the board, or is it?
No, it depends. It's not universal, because some people don't like shakes. And if I have somebody who's already doing shakes, sometimes I'll just say, okay, is it a dairy-based shake? Are you adding dairy to it? Are you doing a vegan shake? Because sometimes the dairy might be inflammatory, and then your shake isn't the great idea that you thought it was. And some people tolerate whey protein shakes, and some people don't. It is what it is. But if they're having issues, I might be like, let's switch it and see what's up. So I don't make everybody on the planet do a shake, but if somebody's already doing it, we try to make it the best. Or a lot of people are putting bananas in their shake, and I'm not a big banana fan, because it can also be inflammatory, and plus it's sugar, and I'd rather have them put other like berries in the shake, something more friendly. So I'll usually like troubleshoot their shake. If they're on a shake and it's not working, I'm like, what are you doing? What's going in the shake that is sabotaging us? So, but I do in general like the fact that shakes don't take as much digestive work as whatever meal they came up with usually.
Yeah.
And so I think that giving the gut a rest, you need the nutrition, but you don't need your gut to be working overdrive even if you're eating several meals a day, if some of them are shakes and you're only digesting 1 meal, that's helpful. Even if you're not doing a fasting window, I'd like for you to eat, but have it be a shake so that your body's not kind of fasting, but you're not doing work though. So that kind of thing. And then you get enough protein. So, it's just like there's a lot of different things I like about shakes.
Oh no, I do too. I'm a huge shake fan.
It gives you vitamins without me making you take a multivitamin.
Well, and you can concentrate so many like nutrients, whole foods, like kind of take out the water, right? And concentrate them. Like you could really do a lot with whole food shakes, whole food based shakes. You just get so much more nutrition in a cup. Now, obviously, if I could eat that much or have people eat that much, I would do that. But I will be the first to admit that I am not great about eating. I'm not great about taking the time to go sit and cook and do all the work that it takes to have this amazing healthy meal, right? So I am a big shake fan for that reason, and everybody, and I have, I think I told you about a friend of mine. She's a chef, but she also does catering, and she's been working on putting some meals together, some whole food, so she did some great meals for me about a week and a half ago. I need to get some more, but she's putting together this, so she can actually offer this to people that are doing healthy eating plans that are like me, but they're not good.
Oh yeah, yeah. So there's and I suggest that to people, like they used to have like My Fit Foods, which is gone now, but there's a lot of people who are copying that and all those meal like Hello Fresh and green whatever mailed basket to your house, the mail a basket to your house approach, So I'm like, but then you can always say the no dairy, no gluten, and then you don't have to think about all of that. Just order something that's not is avoiding whatever you're trying to avoid. So like gluten, a lot of people are like, well, if I'm not allergic to gluten, is it still tearing up my gut?
Yeah.
Right. It is.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. Well, it's just like dairy,
Yeah.
they're not having like an immediate reaction to it. It still could be causing a lot of inflammation in the body, a lot of other issues that they're not necessarily aware of, right? So, yeah, kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I read something somewhere like gluten blunts your villi. Like you have all these little villi that are supposed to be moving everything around, and gluten kind of kills them.
It's interesting how gluten's become such a big, part of our diet, just in general, and how much of an issue it causes for people.
Yep. So I tell people, I was like, no matter what, it means, I was like, if some people have to go 100% gluten free, they eat one little molecule and they're miserable. But then there's the other end of the spectrum, even the healthiest person in the world who doesn't feel miserable at all. It's still, naturally occurring. If you only had naturally occurring gluten, it's a very small amount, and it might be an amount that our body could tolerate 20, 30, 40 years ago. But now that we've genetically modified things and there's more gluten in everything, we put gluten on potato chips to make them taste good. We put it in shampoo to make it thicker. We put it in everything. And our body just doesn't have the receptors for what we're doing. So even if you're mindful about not eating that much gluten, you're still eating gluten. Like I try not to eat gluten, but it's still there, but at least I tried, and it's 80% better than what would happen if I didn't try.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, gluten is a big one. When it comes to gut repair, I'm like, that's the first thing. If somebody's like, I agree that my gut is just terrible, it's behaving terribly, I'm like, yeah, gluten and dairy are on our hit list, and work, figure it out.
I see. What I've learned for myself as well is that, if I'm not eating it and then I have it, I will almost always notice symptoms, some kind of, I don't know. It's usually mine is like a congestion of my nose. That's probably the first thing that I notice if I have gluten. And now what's interesting though is people that are eating it every day, they just assume, oh, they've got chronic this, like chronic allergies or chronic whatever their symptoms are, right? They don't really look at, what potentially is causing that. Now, when they take it out of their diet, so they do one of my detox programs or something, all of a sudden those symptoms are gone. And then they add it back. It becomes very obvious how it's affecting them. But until they take it out and actually are knowing and actually can experience the difference, it's really hard to, anyways, it's just interesting.
No, I tell them the same thing, because they'll be like, do I have to give it up completely? And I'm like, at first you do. Like for the first 6 weeks, I really want you to like just not eat these two things. Just do your best to like get. And then I was like, and then add them back one at a time and see how you feel. And then usually I don't have to tell them to continue to avoid it. They'll be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have a bad day when every time I try to add it back, it attacks me. I'm like, yeah, now you know.
Exactly. But I think that's the biggest thing. It's like once you take it away, right? They start really like experiencing what it's like to feel good. It's fascinating. It really is to then they add it back. They're like, okay, now I get it.
Yeah.
Now I get it. So yeah.
But it's hard. But yeah, I was like, gut is hard. Gut health is really, really, because there's so many little things.
Right.
Your diet, even like food colors I take. I mean, there's so many little things that I have to keep going on and on. What about artificial sugars?
Oh gosh, those are like, it's funny. I was just talking to somebody this morning and she was telling me, she's like, I have a friend of mine. And she's like, it's always weird because we go to lunch and she does all this health stuff and all this natural stuff and everything. And she said, every time she orders a Diet Coke or a diet drink. And she's like, it just doesn't seem to go together for me. So anyways, that was a conversation we had this morning. I really think I'd rather people drink, if they're going to have a soda, a Coke, whatever, I'd rather them drink a regular Coke over a Diet Coke any day because of artificial sugars. They're so toxic. Not that I'm telling people to go drink regular drinks by any stretch, but I don't know. I am not a fan of the artificial aspartame.
I know. And we know that they alter your gut flora. Like,
yes.
We know that they alter your gut flora. So a lot of times people do the diet sugars thinking, oh, I'm going to lose weight. And I'm like, well, you've gotten rid of calories. So that is one thing. But if it alters your gut flora in a negative way, I mean, they've done studies where they've taken like a skinny person, taken their poop, put it in a capsule, fed it to an obese person. And the obese person, once their flora changes to how the skinny person is, they lose weight just because if your gut flora is set up like a skinny person, you're a skinny person. If it's set up like an obese person, you're an obese person. And people don't, they do little things to diet, not realizing it's adversely affecting their gut flora. Like, I don't think the keto diet is great for your gut flora. I mean, all that meat and fat is like, well, that's not what we're doing.
The challenge, like the keto gets such a bad rap because it's so, everybody assumes it's like this really, really high doses of protein and this and that. It's really more, there's a healthy version of it. That's why I don't like the word just keto, right? It's not just keto. I think there's a healthy version of it too.
Yeah, I mean, but there's also low carb and there's keto. When people are doing keto and only 20% of their calories are coming from carbohydrates, the problem is you're missing a lot of the vegetables and the fruits with colors and things that, are beneficial for your flora. So I think that it would tend towards, so it's not even so much that they're eating a ton of meat, which is definitely not improving your flora, but it's also, if you remove fruits and vegetables, which are good at populating the good bacteria, it's sort of like, I think it skews it and not necessarily in an easy to recover fashion. So even if they were trying to do a healthy keto, I'm like, it's just something about that 20%. If you can do low carb, but I mean, when you drop below a certain amount of carbs, you're not getting the fruits and vegetables that's necessary. You're not getting the 7 servings that you need a day. That's very favorable for your gut.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I think that's a really good point. I think that I think it's kind of terminology too. So,
well, yeah.
Healthy keto.
I know, but most people, but how many people have you met on a healthy keto? That's the problem. It's like, yeah, they find the fun keto.
Yeah.
You might do a healthy keto, but the average person, even if you've given them instructions, like freestyled it.
Yeah, that's true. It's like fried this, fried that. Right, whatever. It's like, no.
Yeah.
That's not what we want.
But even if they were eating organic beef and organic chicken, those two things aren't what I think of when I'm trying to heal your gut.
Yeah, no, they need veggies.
Lots of them.
Focus on more veggies than anything else. And, fruit, like the low sugar fruit is what I typically prefer. And for people in general, and then
like berries. I think berries are very gut friendly. Yeah,
berries, yes, and then good sources of protein, healthy sources of protein, and then good fats. I would say that would be kind of the order I would say to focus on things. Now, with that being said, I think protein is so crucial that they need protein. I tell people to have at least a little protein, 3 to 4 ounces in every meal, like the 2 or 3 meals that they're having a day, because I think a lot of people are very protein deficient as well. So, yeah, it's an interesting balance, though. It's an interesting challenge to get people to eat the way that we want them to eat, isn't it?
Yeah. Or even, like I said, it's not like there's one way that we could give it to everybody and say, everybody eat exactly this one way. It's like, it's such a process that I have to go through to investigate what's good for this person or that person.
Right.
Like, I don't take eggs away from everybody, but I definitely, it's one of the top 10 food intolerances. So I definitely.
I know, and I like eggs. I think because they're such a complete form of protein, and I've always been a fan of eggs. So
yeah, but definitely I've met my fair share of people where I was like, well, oops, not you. Never, or even soy. Soy gets a bad rap, but I mean, and a lot of people do have the food intolerance to soy. But if you actually look at the research on soy and gut health, it's very favorable if you're live in Japan or you're not intolerant to it, and it's not genetically modified. I mean, soy in and of itself is not unfavorable, but in this country where 95% is genetically modified, then well, now we got a problem.
Yep, true. So
we got our whole hour, and then we can probably leave this one up because we didn't go off topic too much.